mapayapang umaga sa ating lahat. Good and peaceful morning to all of us. I hope you don't mind if I do my sharing from the table for two reasons. First, my knees are shaking, and second, I would rather have the pictures that we will be presenting later to speak for themselves. Okay, to start off, let us start. Let's just wait for the PowerPoint presentation. Is it okay now?
Okay. As always in these cases, we always get technical glitches. Okay, there
here
it is.
It is.
Okay.
As
Thank you,
Carlos
Darren.
mentioned earlier, I will be focusing on women in agriculture and climate change. But for this presentation, I would like us to start with this journey done in April 2006. Next slide, please. This journey done in 2006, joined by around 2,000 members of the Tiduray Lambangian tribe. They marched for 7 days in Maguindanao in what they called the Lakbay Tribo para sa Gubat at Lupaing Ninuno, or a journey for their forest and ancestral lands. It was a peaceful protest against logging, mining, agribusiness plantations, and other forms of encroachment into their ancestral domains. Their intention was to reclaim the land of their ancestors and pursue a life of security and dignity. Indigenous women took part in this 7-day march, ensuring that food, water, and medicines were ready to sustain the marchers. Next slide, please. As in everyday life, the women are recognized for the important role they play in sustaining the daily needs of their families, undertaking farming activities, fetching water, foraging for food, gathering wood for fuel, and growing herbal medicines. But the women of the Tiduray Lambangian tribe were also there to set the cadence of the march by beating their gongs, their traditional musical instruments. They called on their goddesses, especially on Minaden, the highest deity who they believe created the universe, for the protection of their livelihood, sources of subsistence, and raw weaving materials. They struck their gongs to uphold Kifiu Fideo. It is a state of being peaceful, where justice prevails, where all rights are respected, and where emotional, mental, and physical environmental problems are resolved. Unfortunately, just recently, the provinces of Maguindanao and Cotabato were ravaged by Typhoon Frank. Next slide, please. The typhoon has brought rampaging floodwaters never before experienced by the tribe, as this picture would show you. Their whole crop was devastated, and they were left to rely on food relief for sustenance. This experience has left the indigenous women worried, and yet they have this sinking feeling that the worst has yet come. This experience is not limited to the Tiduray women, but is suffered by millions of women who live in the rural areas, the food producers. Climatic disruptions seem to worsen each passing year, wreaking havoc on production systems that pretty soon, the stories of bountiful harvest may soon become myths. In the Philippines, a country hit by an average of 20 typhoons in a year, nature also inflicts earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, but there are other environmental concerns emerging. Ines has mentioned it, I'm sure yesterday, since yesterday you have been discussing the different disasters and phenomena representing climate change. But I would like to emphasize plant diseases, pest or insect infestations, soil degradation, deforestation and landslides, and chemical pollution as some of the ill effects of these disasters. Invariably, it is the women and their young who suffer the most from nature's wrath. Most affected are the women in agriculture, the hands that feed half of the world. In a study done by Centro Saka, women are indeed found to play a central role in feeding the country. Ines has mentioned that women are in the kitchens, in the homes, in the farms, in the markets. Our study has shown that women dominate the planting and harvesting activities, especially in the production of our staple crops. And despite the unpaid character of their labor, women in agriculture are the ones left in charge of finance-related activities, the accessing of production capital, the marketing of the produce. And at the household level, women's reproductive activities span an average of 1 to 3 hours each for preparation of food and tools for the farm workers, gathering food, gathering wood, raising livestock and poultry, fetching water, and other non-farm income activities to augment household income. Yet despite all these roles, women have lesser control over the land. And while women are found to have high participation in decision-making, in the case of the Philippines, we should note that these are being made under conditions of scarce resources and with little access to services. I would like to focus our attention on the fact that less than 20% of the 1,194 women we have interviewed have access to seeds, and yet they are the ones in charge with planting activities. Few rural women have access to capacity building services. Less than half have access to communication services. Less than 30%